He had it all: wealth, power, and a life that everyone envied. But in a single night, it all came crashing down. Gone. Every empire, every fortune, vanished, leaving only ashes. And just when he thought his world was over, she appeared. A woman he didn't expect, a love he never imagined, and a chance to rebuild, not just his life, but his heart. This is the story of betrayal, heartbreak, and a love so powerful it could bring a fallen billionaire back from the edge of despair. Will she be his salvation? Or will the storms of life destroy them both? Stay with us, because this story isn't just about money or power. It's about love, trust, and the impossible choices that change everything. Hi, my beautiful family. I have missed you all. Thank you so for sticking around with me. I truly appreciate your love and support. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The soft clatter of espresso cups in the small Carmel cafe barely reached him over the buzzing of his thoughts. Elliot Vaughn, once the man everyone envied, now sat hunched over a chipped latte, staring out the window at the mist curling over the coastal cliffs. At 38, he had lost more than money. He'd lost control, identity, and the illusion that everything could be bought. Across the room, she entered with the easy confidence of someone who belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. Naomi Sinclair, 34, carried a portfolio case in one hand and a paper coffee cup in the other. Her eyes, a striking hazel flecked with gold, scanned the room before landing on the only empty seat, beside him. Elliot noticed her hesitation, the subtle question in her stance. Without thinking, he gestured toward the chair. "You're welcome to sit," he said, voice low, a mixture of exhaustion and something sharper. Pride, maybe. She smiled, just slightly, and set her bag down. "Thanks," she replied, her tone polite but steady. "I hope I'm not interrupting. Whatever this is." He shrugged, glancing at the financial news blaring silently from his phone. "Just watching my empire crumble in real time." His laugh was humorless. Her eyebrows rose, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, curiosity sparking. "That sounds rough. But I guess you can't control everything, huh?" Elliot's gaze flicked to her, taking in the quiet strength in her posture. Naomi wasn't afraid of him, or the story he carried like a weight around his shoulders. In a strange way, it was disarming. "I could use a little help," he admitted before he could stop himself. "Figuring out how to breathe when everything burns." Naomi tilted her head. "Depends. Are we talking metaphorically or literally?" Her playful edge didn't mock, it invited him to drop the walls he'd built higher than the mansions he'd lost. He chuckled, a sound that surprised him. "Both, maybe. But mostly, emotionally." She studied him for a beat, then nodded. "Well, I help people rebuild things. Not financial empires, usually, but lives. That counts, right?" It was a gamble, offering her something tangible. "I can pay," he said quickly, almost reflexively. She shook her head, tucking a curl behind her ear. "Not everything has to be a transaction," she said. "But I do work best if there's a plan. Maybe we start with coffee and see where it goes." Elliot allowed himself a small smile, the first in days. "A plan. I can manage that." The tension between them was quiet but electric, a contrast to the chaos of his life. In her presence, the world seemed smaller, less menacing. He didn't know if it was hope or stubborn denial, but for the first time since the collapse, he didn't feel entirely alone. As they spoke, laughter threading through moments of awkward honesty, Elliot realized something he hadn't in years. He wasn't just a fallen billionaire anymore. In that cafe, beside Naomi, he was simply a man. Vulnerable, flawed, but visible. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward getting his life back. Have you ever met someone who made you feel seen, even in your worst moments? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how someone's presence changed your life. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of what remained of Elliot Vaughn's once grand penthouse in Carmel. Dust motes floated like tiny stars over the marble floor, the air carrying a faint scent of old money and forgotten opulence. His private jet, his yachts, the sprawling Napa estate, all vanished overnight. But Elliot's movements still retained the precision of someone who had commanded empires, a rhythm born from years of being the architect of his own wealth. Naomi watched quietly from the doorway, arms folded over her sharp-lined blazer. She had insisted on visiting him to assess the situation before agreeing to help. Her eyes lingered on the traces of luxury scattered around, a vintage crystal decanter half full of aged whiskey, an untouched grand piano gleaming under the sunlight, a Persian rug with threads so fine they almost disappeared underfoot. "You really did own all this?" she asked, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Elliot shrugged, running a hand over the smooth surface of the piano. "It's funny," he said, voice low, "how quickly these things mean nothing when you wake up and it's all gone. But I still remember what it felt like to control it." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "And does it feel good? Remembering?" He paused, considering her question. "Not really. But it's a reminder of who I used to be. And maybe who I can be again." Her gaze softened. "Or maybe it's just a reminder that who you are doesn't need the empire to exist." Elliot looked at her then, really looked, and felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in years, humility, mingled with curiosity. Naomi Sinclair wasn't dazzled by wealth. She wasn't calculating how she could benefit. She saw the man beneath the veneer, and that was terrifying, but also thrilling. "Okay," she said finally, stepping closer. "Here's what I propose. We make a plan. You tell me exactly what you need, emotionally, mentally, and I'll guide you. No strings, no judgment. Think of it as a work exchange." Elliot blinked. "A work exchange?" "Yes," she replied, with that calm confidence that made her so hard to read. "I help you rebuild your life, and you do whatever you can offer in return. Skills, wisdom, connections, whatever. And maybe, in the process, we both gain something." He laughed, genuine this time, a sound that reverberated against the empty walls. "You make it sound like I'm applying for a job." "You are," she quipped, tilting her head. "Your life. You're interviewing me to see if I fit the role of your emotional architect." Elliot paused, considering. Her words were brash, unexpected, but they cut through the haze of his pride. He had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals, navigating hostile takeovers, and now he was negotiating with someone who held no financial stake, just empathy, insight, and the audacity to challenge him. "I can live with that," he said finally. "But you should know. I have a tendency to resist help, especially from people who see through me." Naomi smirked, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "Good. I'd hate to make it easy." The day unfolded with small acts that revealed Elliot's wealth and discipline, despite its collapse. He showed Naomi the old study, once lined with first-edition books and awards. He described the vineyards he had owned in Napa, the annual charity galas, the art auctions, stories that felt like both a confession and a cautionary tale. Each tale highlighted not just wealth lost, but effort, ambition, and the loneliness that had come with it. Naomi listened, sometimes questioning, sometimes teasing, always grounding him in reality. When Elliot recounted a particularly humiliating boardroom betrayal, she didn't offer pity. Instead, she suggested strategies to rebuild his confidence and vision. The exchange was electric, a push and pull between ego and trust, between old power and new vulnerability. By sunset, Elliot realized something crucial. Wealth had shaped him, yes, but it hadn't defined him. Naomi was teaching him that his worth wasn't in the yachts, the penthouses, or the stock portfolio. It was in his resilience, his intellect, and, uncomfortably, yet undeniably, the way he made her laugh. As she gathered her things to leave, Naomi paused at the doorway. "Remember," she said softly, "we start with small steps. You don't need to be a billionaire again to be you. Just be willing to try." Elliot nodded, feeling a flicker of hope he hadn't allowed himself in years. "I'll try," he said. And for the first time in a long while, those words felt possible. Have you ever had someone challenge your pride in a way that helped you grow? Share in the comments. How did that change your perspective? The wind whipped through the narrow streets of Carmel that spring morning, carrying a sharp tang of salt from the cliffs below. Elliot had been walking without purpose, letting the chaos of his collapsed life weigh on him, when he noticed a small crowd gathered outside a boutique art gallery. Through the misted glass, he saw her, Naomi, flustered, holding a stack of canvases under one arm, her coat flapping wildly in the gusts. Without thinking, he pushed through the door just as a particularly strong gust caught one of her paintings, sending it tumbling toward the polished wooden floor. "Whoa!" He lunged instinctively, catching it mid-air before it hit. The canvas shook in his hands as he steadied it, and when he looked up, Naomi's hazel eyes met his. "You saved it!" she exclaimed, breathless. A strand of her hair had escaped her bun, sticking to her damp cheek. "That would have been catastrophic." He shrugged, handing it back. "Catastrophic for the art, or for you?" His voice carried a teasing edge, but beneath it was a genuine concern. She chuckled, a warm, musical sound that cut through the storm outside. "Both, maybe. I have a reputation to maintain." "Clearly," he said, scanning the other paintings. "Though from where I'm standing, some things are more fragile than reputations." Naomi's eyes narrowed, amusement flickering alongside curiosity. "Oh, and you would know about fragility?" He grinned, a flash of self-awareness crossing his features. "More than I'd like." He gestured to the storm outside. "The world has a funny way of reminding you." She studied him for a moment, then tilted her head. "Well, Mr. Vaughn. Elliot Vaughn." He extended a hand, and for a heartbeat, the room felt smaller, more intimate despite the wind and the chaos. "Naomi Sinclair," she replied, taking his hand with a firm shake. The warmth of her grip lingered longer than either expected. They moved together to right the canvases, laughter punctuating the awkwardness of close quarters. Elliot noticed the way her fingers lingered over the edges of the frames, careful, deliberate, the same care she applied to him without even realizing it. "You have a knack for walking into disasters," Naomi said, a playful smirk tugging at her lips. "Depends on how you define disasters," he countered. "Some I chase, some chase me." She laughed, and it was impossible not to be drawn in. "You're impossible," she said, shaking her head. "But I like it. It's refreshing." The storm outside intensified, rain pelting against the gallery windows. Naomi glanced at the door, debating whether to dash through it or wait it out. Elliot, impulsively, offered his coat. "Here," he said, draping it over her shoulders. "You're going to catch a cold otherwise." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the teasing and barriers fell away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I appreciate it." They walked out into the rain together, Elliot shielding the canvases with one arm, Naomi clutching his coat around her shoulders. Every step was a dance of closeness, a rhythm neither had expected, yet neither resisted. When they reached the car, Naomi turned, raising an eyebrow. "You know, you're officially my unexpected hero of the day." "Only today," he teased, unlocking the vehicle. "Don't push your luck," she warned, sliding into the passenger seat. The ride back to her studio was filled with comfortable conversation, punctuated by occasional laughter and the quiet thrill of new connection. Elliot realized that with Naomi, he didn't need to maintain his defenses. She seemed to understand the man beneath the public persona he'd spent years constructing. By the time they reached her studio, the storm had passed, leaving a misty, glistening town behind. Naomi turned to him, her expression half serious, half smile. "Elliot Vaughn," she said, "I think this is the beginning of something interesting." He met her gaze, a flicker of hope sparking in his chest. "Interesting," he echoed. "I like the sound of that." And just like that, amidst rain-soaked streets and spilled paint, the first real spark ignited, a connection neither wealth nor loss could obscure. Have you ever met someone by sheer chance who changed the course of your day, or your life? Share your story in the comments below. The evening air in Carmel carried the scent of blooming jasmine and salt from the nearby cliffs. Elliot had insisted on picking Naomi up for dinner, though she suspected it was more about him attempting to reclaim some semblance of normalcy than any grand romantic gesture. Still, she smiled as his sleek black car pulled up outside her studio, headlights glinting in the fading sunlight. "You look different," she said, stepping in, brushing a stray curl from her face. "I hope that's good," he replied, his hazel eyes reflecting both amusement and nerves. "You're not so bad yourself," she countered with a teasing lilt. The way he smiled in response made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. Dinner was at a quiet seaside bistro, tucked away on a cobblestone street Elliot had discovered years ago. The kind of place tourists never found, where waiters knew your name and the chef emerged to explain each dish with pride. Elliot's presence wasn't ostentatious. The warmth in his gestures, the easy charm, made the table feel intimate despite his history of wealth. They started with small talk, careful at first, circling the edges of their lives. Naomi asked about his favorite childhood memories, his hobbies, the things he loved before ambition consumed him. For the first time, Elliot spoke not as a CEO, not as a man defined by money, but as Elliot, the man who laughed at silly jokes, who cared for details, who could feel deeply and quietly. "And what about you?" he asked, leaning slightly forward, elbows resting on the table. "Naomi Sinclair. I want to know what makes you, you." She hesitated, then smiled softly. "I like helping people find their strength. Seeing them realize they're more capable than they think. It's a kind of magic. And I love art. Painting, mostly, but any way to capture the way life feels. That's what drives me." Elliot's gaze softened, touched by her honesty. "That's beautiful." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the quiet clink of silverware and distant waves. Then Elliot reached across the table, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, letting his fingers linger just a moment longer than necessary. Naomi felt a shiver run down her spine. Her heart skipped, not from grand gestures, but the intimacy of a small touch that spoke volumes. "You're very forward," she murmured, half teasing, half breathless. "I'm trying to keep up with you," he said with a grin. "You're harder to read than anyone I've ever met." Their conversation wove seamlessly between laughter and heartfelt confessions. Elliot shared the sting of his loss, not as a billionaire gone broke, but as a man who had lost control of the life he had built. Naomi listened without judgment, nodding, offering insights that gently challenged his perspective, coaxing him into vulnerability he rarely allowed himself. When dessert arrived, chocolate soufflé with a hint of espresso, Elliot offered a bite to Naomi, holding her gaze as she leaned in. Their fingers brushed, then lingered, a spark igniting between them. Neither pulled away, and for a moment, the restaurant, the town, even his past, seemed irrelevant. Walking back under the starlit sky, Elliot draped his coat over her shoulders again, the gesture now familiar, tender. Naomi looked up at him, hazel eyes reflecting the streetlights and something softer, trust, affection, the first buds of something deeper. "You know," Elliot said quietly, "I haven't felt this relaxed in years. Not just with someone, but in life." Naomi smiled, brushing her hand lightly over his arm. "Good," she said softly. "Because you deserve it." They paused at the corner near her studio, the night quiet except for distant waves crashing against the cliffs. Elliot hesitated, then took her hand in his, holding it gently, deliberately. Naomi's breath caught. "Elliot, I don't want this night to end," he admitted, his voice low, sincere. "I feel something with you. Something I can't ignore." Her cheeks warmed. "I feel it too," she whispered. The honesty between them was electric, tender, fragile yet undeniable. As they finally parted for the evening, Elliot's hand lingered around hers just a moment longer, a silent promise of more moments, more connection, more intimacy yet to come. That night, as Naomi lay in bed replaying the evening, she realized she hadn't just enjoyed dinner with a man rebuilding his life. She had felt something rare, a quiet, deep connection that stirred hope and longing in equal measure. Have you ever shared a moment so perfect it felt like the world paused just for you? Share your most memorable first date or magical moment in the comments below. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Naomi's art studio, painting golden streaks across the canvases. She was mid-stroke on a new painting, colors blending under her skilled fingers, when Elliot leaned casually against the doorway, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "You're amazing," he said softly, eyes not leaving her. "Every time I see you paint, it's like you're speaking without words." Naomi glanced over her shoulder, a faint blush warming her cheeks. "Careful," she teased. "You'll make me think I'm brilliant instead of just stubborn." He chuckled, taking a step closer, the familiar scent of cedar and sea breeze clinging to him. "I mean it," he said. "You make me forget about everything else for a while." She paused, brush hovering over the canvas. The studio suddenly felt smaller, the space between them charged with something unspoken. Naomi had felt sparks before, when he rescued her painting in the storm, during dinner, but this felt deeper, slower, a pull she couldn't resist. I like spending time with you," she admitted, carefully, as if saying it aloud could break the fragile moment. Elliot's heart skipped. "I like being with you too," he said, voice low. He stepped closer, bridging the small distance between them, until he could see the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. She swallowed, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "You're dangerously close," she murmured. "And you?" he asked, his gaze softening. "Are you?" Naomi's answer was a quiet tilt of her chin, a subtle invitation. Her fingers brushed against his hand as he moved closer, and that touch, light, fleeting, deliberate, sent a shiver up his spine. Without thinking, Elliot cupped her face gently in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones, his eyes searching hers for permission. Naomi didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, heart racing, and their lips met softly, hesitantly at first, testing the waters. The kiss deepened gradually, a tender, electric melding of trust, longing, and something unspoken between them. Elliot's hand moved from her face to the small of her back, drawing her closer, while Naomi's hands rested lightly on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. When they finally parted, both breathed heavily, eyes locked, smiles shy but certain. I've wanted to do that for a long time," Elliot admitted, voice husky. Naomi's cheeks flushed, lips curving into a smile. "Me too," she whispered. "I didn't know if I should, but—" Her words trailed off, the unsaid filled by the warmth lingering between them. They spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable proximity, painting, talking, laughing, and sharing small touches, hands brushing over brushes, shoulders leaning against each other, occasional glances that lingered just a moment too long. Every gesture deepened their connection, building trust and desire without rushing it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting amber light across the studio, Elliot took Naomi's hand again, entwining fingers with hers. "I don't want this day to end," he said, almost reverently. "I feel something real with you." Naomi squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. "I feel it too. It's scary, but exciting." Elliot leaned in once more, this time pressing a gentle kiss to her temple, a silent promise that he was there, fully present, and willing to explore whatever this connection could become. Naomi rested her head against his shoulder, letting herself savor the feeling, a warmth, a hope, a sense of being seen completely. That night, as she closed the studio and walked home through the quiet streets of Carmel, Naomi couldn't stop smiling. She had felt something rare, a connection that wasn't just chemistry or attraction, but a deep, resonant bond that promised growth, love, and perhaps even healing. For Elliot, lying in the quiet of his temporary apartment, the kiss lingered in his mind like sunlight after a storm, a reminder that even after losing everything, there could be moments of grace, beauty, and love worth holding on to. Have you ever shared a first kiss that changed everything for you? Tell us in the comments about the moment you felt your heart truly open. The morning fog rolled over Carmel like a living thing, hiding the cliffs and muffling the sound of the waves. Elliot sat at his temporary apartment's balcony, coffee untouched, mind racing. The storm of his financial collapse was one thing, but today, the real storm was arriving, an unexpected message from his former business partner, a woman named Sylvia Kane. Sylvia wasn't just any ex-partner, she was ruthless, calculating, the type of person who could dismantle a man's life with a single phone call. And she had just resurfaced, reminding Elliot that his empire's downfall wasn't over. Legal claims, investors' lawsuits, and a damning media leak threatened to erase his name completely. As if that wasn't enough, Naomi walked into his apartment without knocking, holding 2 coffees, her presence warm and grounding. "You look like someone just told you your life exploded all over again," she said softly, placing a cup beside him. Elliot ran a hand through his hair. "You're not wrong." She sat across from him, her eyes locking onto his with a mix of concern and fierce determination. "Talk to me. What's happening?" He hesitated. Vulnerability was one thing, but the chaos Sylvia brought? That was a storm he wasn't sure Naomi could navigate. Yet, something in her steady gaze gave him courage. "It's legal. And media. And complicated. But it's coming at me like a freight train." Naomi didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, voice low but firm. "Then we face it like a team. You're not alone, Elliot." He swallowed, struck by the intensity of her declaration. She wasn't just supporting him emotionally anymore. She was stepping into the chaos, willing to fight alongside him. His chest tightened at the thought. Later that afternoon, while meeting in his penthouse study, Elliot and Naomi reviewed the avalanche of threats. Every paper felt like a landmine, every email like a ticking bomb. But as they worked, something unexpected happened. They discovered a pattern in Sylvia's moves, a crack in her strategy that Elliot hadn't seen. Naomi's analytical mind, combined with Elliot's instinct, began turning the tide. 4 hours, they brainstormed, mapped out scenarios, and plotted their moves. It was exhilarating, dangerous, but intoxicating. He realized, in awe, that he had never felt this alive since before his empire fell. But just when they celebrated a small victory, the doorbell rang. Elliot opened it to find a man in a tailored suit, holding an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, Naomi, taken without her knowledge, leaving the studio earlier that week. Written on the back, "Step back or it gets worse." Naomi gasped, a chill running down her spine. "They're watching me." Elliot grabbed her hand, feeling the pulse of fear in hers, yet also the undeniable spark of trust. "They won't hurt you. Not on my watch." The tension shifted from financial to deeply personal. Suddenly, their connection wasn't just about healing or romance, it was about protecting one another, about stakes higher than either had anticipated. Fear mingled with attraction, danger with intimacy, creating a potent, electrifying mix neither could ignore. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the foggy cliffs, Elliot pulled Naomi close, brushing her hair back and pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "We'll get through this," he murmured, voice low but resolute. "Together." She rested her forehead against his chest, taking comfort in the warmth and strength he offered. "Together," she echoed. And in that moment, it was clear. Their bond had transformed. The obstacles weren't just external. They were catalysts, accelerating trust, deepening love, and testing courage in ways they'd never imagined. For Elliot, this was no longer about rebuilding wealth. It was about protecting the one person who made him want to fight, live, and love again. And for Naomi, it was no longer about helping a fallen man. It was about standing beside someone she believed in, even when the world threatened to tear them apart. The night ended with them holding each other close, minds racing with danger and hearts beating faster from connection, knowing that whatever came next, they were no longer two people surviving separately. They were a force together, unstoppable in love, even as the storm outside mirrored the chaos waiting to strike again. Have you ever faced a challenge that tested your heart as much as your courage? Share a time when love or trust helped you survive the impossible in the comments below. The rain hammered down on Carmel that evening, turning streets into rivers and streetlights into blurred halos of gold. Elliot paced the living room of his penthouse, phone in hand, trying to reach lawyers, investors, anyone who could give him even a sliver of control. But every call ended with the same sinking feeling: deadlines, threats, and no way out. Naomi watched him from the doorway, her arms crossed, worry etched into her delicate features. She had never seen him like this. The same man who had once owned empires now hunched, restless, a storm of frustration and fear. "Elliot, you're exhausting yourself," she said gently. "I can't stop," he snapped, then immediately regretted it. His voice softened. I can't lose everything again." Naomi stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "You're not alone. Look at me, Elliot. Whatever happens, we face it together. You don't have to carry this alone." He closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him, but the tension didn't lift. The envelope from Sylvia, the surveillance, the looming lawsuits, it all felt insurmountable. Yet, beneath the panic, there was Naomi, unwavering, grounding him. The contrast between chaos outside and warmth beside him was dizzying, and he clung to it. Hours later, as the storm outside reached a fever pitch, a power outage plunged the penthouse into darkness. The sudden silence, broken only by the rain's furious drumming, mirrored the uncertainty of his life. They lit candles, casting flickering shadows on the walls, and sat close together, the intimacy of the situation forcing a rare vulnerability. "I feel trapped," Elliot admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent my life controlling everything, and now I can't even control whether I lose you too." Naomi's hand found his, squeezing gently. "You won't. We're stronger than the chaos. But you have to let me in. Let me help you not just survive, but trust again." Her words broke through the last of his defenses. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "I want that," he whispered. "I want all of it." For a few hours, the world outside didn't exist. They talked, really talked, about fears, regrets, and hopes, the storm outside echoing the turbulence in Elliot's mind. Their closeness was more than romantic now. It was a lifeline, a tether in the darkness. But just as dawn approached, the phone rang. Elliot answered, and Sylvia's voice cut through the haze like a knife. "You think you can hide behind a woman and rebuild? Think again. You'll lose everything, and her, unless you comply." The threat was clear, cold, and calculated. Elliot felt a surge of anger and helplessness, but Naomi didn't flinch. She stepped beside him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "You won't intimidate us," she said firmly. "We face this together. Whatever you throw at us, we're ready." Her courage ignited something in Elliot. For the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of defiance, a determination to fight not just for survival, but for the love and trust they had built. The fear was still there, but so was a new resolve, the kind only born when someone believes in you, unconditionally. That night, despite the darkness, Elliot pulled Naomi close, holding her as if letting go would mean losing everything he truly cared about. The external threats hadn't gone away, but in the quiet of their embrace, they found strength in each other. As the storm outside finally began to fade, Elliot realized a fundamental truth. The world could strip him of wealth, control, and status, but it could never touch what they had created together. Love, raw, unshakable, and fearless, was now his greatest asset. Have you ever faced a storm in life that tested both your courage and your love? Share how you and someone you cared about overcame a challenge together. The Carmel sunrise filtered weakly through the heavy clouds, but inside Elliot's temporary apartment, the atmosphere was anything but serene. Elliot sat at the desk, the weight of unresolved threats pressing down on him like a physical force. The envelopes, the emails, the media leaks, they were one thing. But the truth he was about to uncover threatened to dismantle everything he thought he had rebuilt. Naomi stepped in quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee, her presence calm but her eyes wary. "You've been quiet all morning," she said softly, sensing the tension that radiated off him like heat. Elliot didn't look up. His hands shook slightly as he held his phone, staring at a message that had just appeared in his inbox, a confidential document labeled Elliot Vaughn, Financial Truths. He opened it, heart hammering. The files contained not just the evidence of his empire's collapse, but something more sinister. Sylvia Kane had secretly siphoned funds for months before the crash, manipulating numbers to make it look like Elliot's negligence had caused the downfall. It wasn't just bad luck. It was betrayal at the highest level, orchestrated by someone he had once trusted implicitly. Naomi leaned over his shoulder, scanning the documents. Her breath hitched. Elliot, this isn't your fault. She framed you. You've been carrying this guilt for nothing. Elliot felt a wave of anger and disbelief, but beneath it lurked another, more insidious emotion: doubt. If someone so close could betray him so completely, could he trust anyone again? Could he even trust himself? I don't know if I can fight this, he admitted, voice barely audible. Everything I've built, everything I thought I knew, it's all a lie. Naomi turned to face him fully, gripping his shoulders. You're not alone, Elliot. You have me. And together, we can fix this. You are not defined by what she did, you're defined by how you respond. Her words were meant to comfort, but Elliot felt the chasm between them widening. Fear, shame, and exhaustion collided, and he took a step back. Maybe you deserve better than a broken man, he said, voice trembling. Someone who hasn't lost everything and then had it stolen from them. Someone who isn't me right now. Naomi's eyes glistened with hurt, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped closer, placing a hand over his heart. Elliot, look at me. You are not broken. You are human. And the man I care about isn't the one with money, power, or status. It's you, the man who fights, who feels, who still chooses to stand after everything tries to knock him down. His chest tightened as her words pierced the wall he had spent weeks building around his heart. He wanted to believe her, to let go of the shame and accept her love, but the storm outside mirrored the chaos inside him. Fear clawed at his mind, threatening to undo everything they had built together. Then, another shock, a knock at the door. Elliot hesitated. He opened it cautiously, only to find a familiar face, an old journalist who had covered his empire. Mr. Vaughn, the man said, voice low, you need to see this. Live broadcast. Sylvia's schemes are being exposed tonight. It's everything you suspected, and more. The truth hit like a lightning strike. Elliot's betrayal was public. His name cleared, but at what cost? The adrenaline surged, excitement mingling with dread. He looked at Naomi, her hand still on his chest, unwavering, her hazel eyes bright with belief in him. In that moment, Elliot felt the breaking point, the weight of betrayal, fear, and doubt threatening to crush him, but also a surge of clarity. The only thing standing between despair and redemption wasn't money, status, or control. It was Naomi, and the love that refused to let him fall entirely. He drew her into a fierce, desperate embrace. I don't want to lose you, he whispered, voice shaking. Not now. Not ever. Naomi rested her forehead against his, breathing steadying, eyes shimmering with emotion. You won't. Not while I'm here. The storm outside eased into a drizzle, but inside, Elliot's world had shifted. Betrayal, danger, and fear had collided with trust, intimacy, and undeniable love. The breaking point wasn't the end, it was the crucible that would forge something stronger, more unbreakable, and more real than either had ever imagined. Have you ever faced a truth so shocking it changed everything? Share how discovering the truth tested your heart and relationships in the comments below. The night in Carmel was suffocatingly silent, broken only by the occasional distant crash of waves against the cliffs. Elliot sat alone in his apartment, the glow of the city lights muted by exhaustion and regret. The truth about Sylvia's betrayal had gone public hours ago, but the victory felt hollow. He had been cleared, yes. But what did that matter when the bridges he had burned, the people he had alienated, and the pride he had lost weighed heavier than any financial ruin? Every deal, every relationship, every fleeting moment of arrogance now looked like a mistake magnified 1,000 times over. Elliot ran his hands through his hair, staring blankly at the city below. The empty apartment seemed to echo his own isolation. Naomi's absence in the room, she had returned home hours earlier, sensing he needed space, made the silence almost unbearable. He felt like a man stripped of identity, haunted by all the wrong choices he had ever made. Regret wrapped around him like a vice. Not just for the empire lost, but for the moments with Naomi he hadn't cherished enough, the times he had let pride interfere, the hesitation before allowing himself to fully trust her. Every memory became a dagger. The playful smiles he almost missed, the first time her hand brushed his, the warmth of her presence he had taken for granted in his obsession with control. He remembered the stormy morning when he first met her, the way she had looked at him with curiosity and fearless honesty. And he realized, he had been blind. Even as love had started to bloom, he had let fear, ego, and shame cloud his heart. Elliot whispered her name into the darkness, a desperate plea. Naomi. I failed you. I'm so sorry. I don't deserve you. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping against the windows like the relentless beat of his own guilt. He remembered her smile that first evening at the seaside bistro, the laughter they shared in the studio, the way her fingers had lingered in his during that first kiss, all moments now tinged with fear that he might ruin them, ruin her trust, ruin them both. He thought of the opportunities squandered, the hesitations, the moments when he had allowed the shadow of past failures to dictate his present. I let it all slip, he muttered, voice cracking. Even her. I almost lost her before I had the chance to truly hold on. Elliot's chest ached as he sank to the floor, leaning against the wall, the weight of regret pressing down with every heartbeat. His mind raced through scenarios of what could have been, if he had acted sooner, trusted sooner, loved without fear. Every what if felt like a stone added to the heap crushing him. But the darkest moment wasn't just about loss or failure. It was the terrifying possibility of losing Naomi for good. The thought of her walking away, disillusioned by his weakness or consumed by frustration at his indecision, made his heart seize. I can't let her go, he whispered, tears streaming freely now. I'll lose everything, but not her. Not her. Outside, the rain became a curtain, washing the world clean as if offering a chance at redemption. Yet inside, Elliot felt the full weight of despair, a man stripped bare, forced to confront the stark reality of what he had almost destroyed, love. Finally, exhausted and broken, he allowed himself to acknowledge a hard truth. The only way forward was to face his regrets head-on, to rebuild not just the life he had lost, but the trust, the intimacy, and the connection with Naomi that had become the only thing worth fighting for. But that realization, born in darkness and tears, was just the beginning. The night had shown him the cost of hesitation, the sting of pride, and the cruel clarity of regret. And as he lay on the floor, the storm outside mirroring the chaos inside, Elliot knew that nothing would be the same, because now, the fight wasn't about wealth or power. It was about love, redemption, and the courage to finally do what his heart had always wanted. Have you ever faced a moment so dark that regret threatened to consume you? How did you find the courage to fight back? Share your story in the comments below. The morning air in Carmel was crisp, tinged with the scent of the sea and blooming wisteria. Elliot stood outside Naomi's studio, heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. He had spent the night drafting a plan, not for business, not for money, but for her. For the woman who had held him through storms, guided him through chaos, and believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. In his hand was a small envelope, sealed with care. Inside was a letter, not full of apologies, those had already been said, but of promises. Promises of love, trust, and a willingness to fight for what mattered most. And behind the envelope, tucked carefully, was a single vintage key, a symbol of his home, his life, and now, the space he wanted her to occupy permanently. He paused at the doorway, nerves threatening to betray him. Then he remembered her eyes, steady and fearless, even in the darkest moments of the storm. That thought gave him courage. He knocked, heart thundering, each beat a declaration of intent. The door opened, and Naomi's hazel eyes widened in surprise. "Elliot, what are you doing here?" she asked, voice cautious but soft. "I'm here," he said, stepping forward, "because I realized something. I've spent so long fearing loss, fearing failure, that I forgot the only thing worth fighting for is this." He gestured between them, hands trembling slightly. "Us. You. Me. What we're building together. I don't want to lose another moment. Not a second." Naomi blinked, a mix of surprise and emotion flashing across her face. Elliot. He handed her the envelope. Open it. She did, unfolding the letter carefully. Her eyes scanned his words, promises, reflections, admissions of past mistakes, and a vow to never let fear dictate their love again. Then she noticed the key. Her breath caught. You want me to, she began, voice trembling, realization dawning. I want you to share my life, he said, taking her hands in his. Not because I need to be whole again, but because I choose you. Every day. Even if the world throws storms at us, even if fear tries to push us apart, I choose you. I want us to face everything together, with love guiding us. For a moment, Naomi couldn't speak. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, and she felt her heart swell with emotion. The man before her was no longer just the fallen billionaire she had been helping. He was vulnerable, brave, and wholly present. The man who had faltered but learned, who had faced regret and fear, and now stood ready to love fully. Finally, she whispered, Elliot, yes. Yes, I choose us too. He drew her into a long, encompassing embrace, holding her as if the world itself could shatter around them, and it would no longer matter. The streets outside remained calm, the fog lifting to reveal sunlight glinting off the ocean below. But inside, the moment was incandescent. Two hearts that had weathered storms, betrayals, and regrets now fully aligned, beating as one. Then, impulsively, Elliot lifted her chin, searching her eyes, and kissed her. It wasn't tentative or hesitant this time. It was a kiss full of promise, passion, and the thrill of survival, proof that love could be reclaimed even from the darkest places. When they finally parted, Naomi rested her forehead against his, laughing softly through tears. You really know how to make a grand gesture, she teased. I've had practice surviving storms, he replied, smiling. But this is the best victory of all. That morning marked not just a turning point in their love story, but in their lives. Elliot had reclaimed himself, not through wealth or status, but through courage, vulnerability, and the audacity to love fully. Naomi had chosen to walk beside him, solidifying the bond that would guide them through the remaining challenges. Have you ever taken a bold step to win back someone or something precious? Share your story of courage and love in the comments below. The early evening in Carmel was calm, almost surreal, a stark contrast to the chaos that had dominated their lives for weeks. Elliot waited outside Naomi's favorite seaside gallery, the soft golden glow from the windows reflecting off the cobblestone streets. In his hand, he held nothing, no envelopes, no keys, no grandiose gesture this time. Only himself, open and ready to meet her not as a man clawing back what he had lost, but as someone who had been remade through love. When Naomi appeared, the subtle smile on her face made his chest tighten. She wore a simple dress, the color of amber sunlight, and her hair fell loosely over her shoulders. But it wasn't her beauty that captivated him, it was the calm confidence she radiated, the warmth in her eyes, the unspoken promise that whatever they faced, they would face it together. Elliot, she said softly, stepping closer. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wouldn't miss this for the world, he replied, voice steady, eyes locking with hers. I've realized something important. The past, the storms, the betrayals, they don't matter as much as this. As us. Naomi's lips curved into a gentle smile. I feel the same. I've waited for this moment too, to be with someone who isn't perfect, but is real. Who loves fully, without holding back. He took her hands, letting the warmth of her touch anchor him. I promise to never let fear or pride come between us again. No more hesitation. No more regrets. Only us, fully, together. Naomi's eyes glistened, the depth of emotion almost overwhelming. I trust you, Elliot. I choose you, every day, in every way. The breakthrough wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a speech or a public declaration. It was quiet, intimate, real. They embraced, letting the weight of the past weeks fall away, replaced by something unshakable, trust, commitment, and love that had been tempered in the fires of adversity. 4 hours, they walked along the cliffs, hand in hand, sharing their dreams, their fears, and the plans for the future. Elliot spoke of rebuilding, not just his life, but the life they would create together. Naomi spoke of her art, her ambitions, and the joy of finally having a partner who could share both the light and the dark. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the ocean in molten gold and amber, Elliot stopped and turned to Naomi. "I've realized something," he said, eyes earnest. "All the money, the power, the empire, it never mattered. What matters is this, you, us. What we've built together in the middle of chaos. That's the real treasure." Naomi reached up, touching his face gently. "And it's priceless," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. They shared a long, lingering kiss, the kind that wasn't just about passion, but about reassurance, connection, and mutual promise. Around them, the world seemed to hold its breath. The past couldn't intrude, the future wasn't yet written, and all that existed was the unwavering bond between them. Later, sitting side by side on a cliff bench, Elliot took Naomi's hand in his, intertwining their fingers. "I want us to keep building this, every day," he said. "I don't care about what comes, as long as we face it together." Naomi leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "We will," she said softly. "Together. Always." In that moment, the breakthrough was complete. Their love, tested and refined through betrayal, fear and despair, had emerged stronger, deeper, and unshakable. Both had faced their darkest fears, acknowledged their regrets, and now stood ready to move forward, not as individuals who had survived, but as a united force. Have you ever experienced a love that made you stronger through challenges? Share how you and someone special overcame obstacles to stand together in the comments below. The morning sunlight spilled over Martha's Vineyard, painting the waves in gold and silver. Naomi stepped onto the small wooden pier, heart racing with anticipation. Elliot had called her the night before with a cryptic message, "Meet me where it all began." She scanned the pier, spotting a small sailboat waiting with white roses tied to its mast. The gentle lap of the waves mirrored the flutter in her chest. And there he was, Elliot, standing at the bow, smiling, hazel eyes shining with a mixture of mischief, tenderness, and deep, unwavering love. "Elliot," she called softly. "Naomi," he said, stepping forward and taking her hands. "Thank you for coming." She felt the warmth of his touch, the steadiness she had come to trust, and the love that had carried them through storms of betrayal, fear, and doubt. "I had to," she replied. "I wouldn't miss this for anything." He took a deep breath, his hands squeezing hers. "These past months have taught me what truly matters. Money, status, power, none of it compares to this," he said, gesturing between them. "You, us, everything we've built together." Naomi's eyes glistened as he continued, reaching into his pocket and producing a small, velvet box. Her breath caught. "Naomi Sinclair," he began, kneeling on one knee as the boat swayed gently. "From the moment I met you, I knew my life had changed. You've shown me love, strength, and courage in ways I never imagined. I don't care about wealth, titles, or control anymore. All I care about is building a life with you, through every challenge, every storm, every joy. Will you marry me?" Time seemed to pause. Naomi's eyes filled with tears, her heart pounding as she took in the man before her, vulnerable, courageous, completely and utterly devoted. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Elliot. 1,000 times yes." The moment was electric. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect circle symbolizing not just love, but survival, trust, and unity. They embraced, laughter and tears mingling, the waves applauding with soft, rhythmic crashes against the pier. Later, Elliot and Naomi sailed the small boat along the coast, the breeze carrying laughter and whispers of love. No words were needed, their hearts spoke clearly, and the warmth of their connection was enough. Months later, surrounded by friends, family, and the serene beauty of Martha's Vineyard, they exchanged vows on a sun-drenched lawn. Elliot held Naomi's hands, his voice steady and full of emotion. "I promise to love you without hesitation, to honor you through every storm, to celebrate every joy, and to always choose us, no matter what life brings." Naomi's voice wavered, soft but confident. I promise to stand beside you, to trust you, to share my heart fully, and to love you through everything, always and forever." As they kissed to seal their vows, the gathered crowd erupted in cheers, but for Elliot and Naomi, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Every struggle, every betrayal, every moment of fear had led to this, a love refined, resilient, and radiant. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and painted the sky in shades of pink and amber, they danced under the open sky, wrapped in each other's arms. There was no shadow of the past, no worry for the future. Only the warmth of now, of shared laughter, kisses, and whispers that promised a lifetime together. For Elliot, it wasn't the empire he had lost that mattered, nor the wealth he could rebuild. It was this, Naomi's hand in his, her heartbeat against his, and the certainty that together, they could face anything. And for Naomi, it wasn't about being a savior or helper anymore. It was about love fully realized, a partner worthy of trust, laughter, and a lifetime of shared dreams. As stars began to glitter above, Elliot pulled her close and whispered, "Here's to forever." Naomi laughed softly, resting her head on his chest. "Forever," she echoed. And in that moment, with hearts full and fears behind them, they stepped into their happiest chapter yet, together, unshakable, and completely in love. Have you ever experienced a love that overcame every obstacle? Share your story of triumph, trust, and happy endings in the comments below.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.